President Ibrahim Traoré's life changed forever after he survived an assassination attempt, one that came from someone he trusted deeply. From nearly dying to choosing a life of simplicity instead of power and luxury, this is the story of a leader who refused to give up. It was early morning, and the mountain air was cool and foggy. Ibrahim was getting ready to leave the presidential palace, unaware that danger was already close. His convoy was ready, black cars polished and waiting. His security team, as always, was alert and prepared. As president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim was always under threat. He had many enemies, both from inside the country and abroad, who wanted to bring him down. But this wasn't the first time he had faced danger. He had already survived coup attempts, outside pressure, and political challenges. He had learned how to stay one step ahead. But this threat was different. It didn't come from a foreign enemy or a corrupt politician. This time, the danger came from someone inside his own trusted circle, his driver. The driver's name was Jean-Pierre. He had worked with Ibrahim for years and had driven him through the streets of Ouagadougou many times. They had talked often, and Ibrahim trusted him completely. But Jean-Pierre was hiding something. A powerful outside group had forced him into a deadly plan. In return for a huge amount of money, he had agreed to help kill the president. The plan was simple: cause a car crash and make it look like an accident. The goal was to create chaos in Burkina Faso by removing the man who had stood up against corruption and foreign control. Jean-Pierre had been told exactly what to do. While driving through the dangerous mountain roads outside the city, he was supposed to steer the car off a cliff, killing Ibrahim instantly. At first, Jean-Pierre had doubts. He had worked for the president for a long time, but the pressure and the promise of money won him over. The group behind the plan said it would be better for the country without Ibrahim strict and bold reforms. As the convoy moved through the sharp curves of the mountain road, Ibrahim sat calmly in the back seat, reading notes for a speech about economic independence. He had no idea what was about to happen. He had no reason to doubt Jean-Pierre. Suddenly, the car swerved close to the edge of the cliff. Ibrahim was startled and braced himself. At first, he thought it was just a mistake, but then it happened. Again, and worse. The tires screeched as the car began to lose control. Within seconds, the vehicle was flying off the road, falling straight off the cliff. Ibrahim felt the ground disappear under him as the car dropped into the valley below. The wind roared in Ibrahim's ears as everything around him spun. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but he could feel the car falling fast. Then suddenly everything went quiet. His heart was beating hard when the car slammed into the ground with a loud crash. The impact threw him forward and everything went dark. When Ibrahim opened his eyes, he felt confused and dizzy. His whole body hurt from the crash, but his first thought wasn't about the pain, it was about staying alive. He had just escaped death. Using all his strength, he pushed open the crushed car door and stumbled out, covered in dust. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eyebrow. His security team was already rushing toward him, but there was no time to lose. They had to get him to safety before the attackers found out he was still alive. As they moved him to a secure place, the truth hit him hard. His own driver had tried to kill him. The man he trusted the most had betrayed him. This wasn't just an attack from an outsider, it was personal. Once safe, Ibrahim looked at his security chief, Zongo. His voice was calm but serious. "Find Jean-Pierre," he said. "He's not just a driver, he's part of something bigger. We need to know who's behind this." Zongo nodded, fully aware of how serious the situation was. This wasn't just one man acting alone. It was part of a larger plan, and there could be more people involved, even close to the president. As they traveled to a safer location, Ibrahim's mind wouldn't rest. He knew one thing for sure: he couldn't stay hidden. That would send the wrong message. His people needed to see that he had survived, not just the crash, but the betrayal. They needed to know he was still strong, still leading. In the days that followed, Ibrahim made a bold decision. He stopped using his armored cars and security teams. Instead, he began riding a motorcycle to work. This one move shocked the nation. He wasn't just a president anymore, he was a man of the people. Riding a simple bike through the streets showed everyone that he wasn't afraid. He didn't need luxury to lead. He chose to stay close to the people, not behind walls. It wasn't just a ride, it was a message. No matter how powerful his enemies were, he wouldn't hide. He wouldn't change who he was. Simplicity, honesty, and service to his people were what guided him. He stayed true to those values, no matter the cost. Every day Ibrahim rode through the streets of Ouagadougou on his bike, helmet on, eyes focused. People waved, cheered, and shouted their support. To them, Ibrahim wasn't just a president anymore. He was a symbol of courage, a leader who refused to be broken. He was one of them, a true leader of the people. Ibrahim Traoré had survived the assassination attempt, but he knew the real fight was just beginning. As he stood in a temporary, safe house, still shaken from the crash, one thought filled his mind: who planned this, and why? The fact that his own driver, Jean-Pierre, had been part of the plot made it even more painful. Ibrahim wasn't just hurt physically, he was hurt emotionally. Someone close to him had turned against him. It wasn't just an attack, it was personal. His mind kept racing. Who else was involved? How far did this conspiracy go? Jean-Pierre had worked with him for years. If he could betray him, anyone could. Ibrahim knew this wasn't just a one-time attack. This was the start of a much bigger political war. He paced the room, deep in thought. Colonel Zongo, his trusted head of security, was doing everything he could to find Jean-Pierre. But Ibrahim knew it wouldn't be easy. This plan was too organized, too well-funded. The people behind it were powerful, and they had resources. "We need to find Jean-Pierre," Ibrahim said firmly as Zongo walked in. "But he's not the only one. Someone much bigger is behind this. We need to follow the money, the contacts, even the foreign connections. Someone out there wants me gone." Zongo nodded, looking serious. "We're on it, sir. We've tracked Jean-Pierre's movements. He's likely hiding near the edge of Ouagadougou, but there's more. We found encrypted messages between Jean-Pierre and a foreign intelligence group." Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. "Foreign intelligence? Who?" Zongo looked uneasy. "The data isn't final yet, but the messages came from a server linked to a Western agency. There's strong reason to believe outside forces are involved." Ibrahim's face turned hard. This wasn't just a local problem. It was global. He had always known that some foreign powers saw him as a threat. His government had begun cutting ties with old colonial powers. They had started using their own resources, building their own economy, and becoming less dependent on foreign aid. That's what they feared the most in Africa that stood on its own. "They think they can just remove me?" Ibrahim said, his voice cold and steady. "They're wrong." As the investigation moved forward, it became clear this plan had been in the works for years. Foreign intelligence had been secretly working inside Burkina Faso, giving money and support to political opponents, waiting for the right moment to strike. But this wasn't just about politics. It was about control. Under Ibrahim's leadership, Burkina Faso was becoming independent, breaking away from years of foreign influence. The country was using its own people, its own labor, and its own strength to move forward. That scared those who had always benefited from keeping African nations weak and dependent. The assassination attempt wasn't just about removing a leader. It was about stopping a movement toward real freedom, ownership, and pride. Burkina Faso had become a symbol of hope and strength for Africa. The powerful countries in the West knew that if it succeeded, other African nations might follow its example. This wasn't just a political issue, it was a serious economic threat to the big companies that had been making huge profits by taking Africa's resources for decades. As Ibrahim learned more about the plot against him, he began to see that surviving the attack had actually been a hidden blessing. It opened his eyes to how deep the global system of exploitation really went, how it kept his people poor and dependent. He had already started important changes to make Burkina Faso's economy stronger and independent from foreign control. But now the pushback from those against him was growing stronger each day. Then, the investigation revealed something that shocked him deeply. Mariam, his ex-wife, had been unknowingly caught in the conspiracy. She wasn't directly part of the plan to kill him, but a foreign intelligence group had used her contacts to get access to secret government information. Ibrahim had always worried that Miriam might be influenced by outside forces, but this still hit him hard. She had been used without realizing it, like a pawn in a bigger game. Ibrahim knew what needed to happen next. The time for investigation was almost over. Those who had planned to kill him had made one big mistake. They underestimated him. And they underestimated the people of Burkina Faso. Now, it wasn't just about finding the truth. It was time to strike back. In the days that followed, Ibrahim and Zongo started building a plan. They would expose everything: how foreign intelligence agencies, corrupt officials, and greedy companies had worked together to bring him down. The goal was not just to defend himself, but to show the people of Burkina Faso and all of Africa that their leader would fight for them. But first, one thing had to be done. Jean-Pierre, the driver who had betrayed him, had to be found. The betrayal came from inside, and Ibrahim needed justice. Zongo's team was getting closer to finding Jean-Pierre. They were almost at the end. Soon, they would have the last missing piece, the man who nearly ended the president's life. But Ibrahim also knew the fight was far from over. The powers behind the plot wouldn't stay silent for long. They would make their final move. This wasn't just about one man or one country anymore. It had become something bigger, something that could change the future of Africa and maybe even global politics. Time was running out. Ibrahim Traoré was ready. His survival had sent a clear message, but now he would send an even louder one. Burkina Faso would not fall. He would rise again stronger than ever. Standing in the war room of his temporary safe house, Ibrahim stared at the maps and reports in front of him. His body was still healing, but his mind had never been more focused. The failed assassination had shown how far his enemies were willing to go, but it also reminded him how far he was willing to go for his people. This fight was no longer just about saving his own life. It was about saving the future. This wasn't just about Ibrahim anymore. It was about the future of Burkina Faso, about African freedom, about building a future where his people could stand on their own without being controlled by foreign powers. Zongo and his intelligence team had been working nonstop to find Jean-Pierre, the driver who had tried to kill him. But Ibrahim knew that Jean-Pierre was just one part of something much bigger. The deeper the investigation went, the more they uncovered. Ibrahim wasn't just dealing with one betrayal. He was fighting a hidden war with foreign agents, corrupt politicians, and international criminals all working together. These groups, once hidden in the shadows, were now being exposed. And Ibrahim knew he had to act fast before they could strike again. Zongo interrupted his thoughts. "The conspiracy goes deep, sir," he said. "We've tracked Jean-Pierre to a safe house just outside Ouagadougou, but there's something even worse. The plan wasn't just about killing you. They wanted to stop your reforms. The foreign agency involved has been trying to destroy your plans for an independent economy. They'd been interfering from the beginning." Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. The truth was becoming clear. This wasn't about one man trying to take power. It was about control. The people behind the plot wanted to keep Burkina Faso weak so they could continue taking its natural wealth. They had used lies, threats, and money to keep the country under their thumb, but Ibrahim had always stood firm. He had promised his people that Burkina Faso would never be a puppet state. And now, with the truth out in the open, he knew what he had to do. "I'm done waiting," Ibrahim said firmly. "I don't care who they are, foreign powers or traitors in my own government. We're exposing all of them. It's time they paid for what they've done." Zongo nodded. "We're ready. We've gathered enough evidence to name some of the key people, foreign diplomats, local officials, even business leaders who've helped move money for the conspirators. The plan is risky, but it could break their entire network." Ibrahim agreed. This was no longer a political game. It was a fight for the soul of the nation. The only way to win was to be smarter, faster, and braver than those who had tried to destroy him. He would use their own tactics, strategy, surprise, and pressure. That night, as the final mission was being prepared, Ibrahim made a personal choice. He wouldn't sit back and wait. He would go to the safe house himself. He would face Jean-Pierre not as a victim but as a leader. And through that he would send a message to the world. Burkina Faso is no longer afraid. He left quietly in an unmarked vehicle, blending into the busy streets. As he neared the target, Songo's voice came through his earpiece. "The safe house is just ahead, sir. We've got the area surrounded. Say the word, and we move." "Understood," Ibrahim replied, his voice calm and sharp. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice for his people, for his country, and for Africa's future. And it wasn't just Jean-Pierre he was going after. It was the whole system that thought they could break him. Ibrahim is chasing down a web of corruption that had been hurting his country for far too long. As he got closer to the safe house, the tension was heavy. He could feel it. This was more than just a mission, it was a turning point. The conspiracy had been planned carefully. But Ibrahim now had the advantage. His enemies had made one mistake. They thought he was weak. They didn't expect him to survive, fight back, or uncover the truth. Suddenly the silence was broken by the sound of vehicles. His team was closing in. Then something unexpected happened. A car pulled up beside Ibrahim's unmarked vehicle. Out stepped Jean-Pierre, his former driver, the same man who had almost killed him. But now Jean-Pierre looked scared, shaken, and broken. "Ibrahim," he said quietly, his voice trembling. I didn't want this. I was forced. I didn't have a choice." Ibrahim stared at him, his jaw tight and his hands gripping the wheel. He had never imagined this moment. He didn't want to face Jean-Pierre like this, but he couldn't forget what the man had done. This wasn't just betrayal. It was treason. "Why?" Ibrahim asked calmly. "Why did you betray me?" Jean-Pierre looked down. His eyes were full of guilt and fear. "They promised to protect my family. They said you were dangerous, that you'd ruin the country. And they said if I didn't help, they'd kill my wife and children. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." Ibrahim listened, but his heart grew colder. He understood fear, but this wasn't just fear. This was a choice, a terrible one. "You chose the wrong side," he said, voice steady. "And now you'll face the consequences." Jean-Pierre dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness, but Ibrahim knew he couldn't show mercy. Not now. Too much was at stake. He had a country to protect. The night continued. Ibrahim's forces moved fast. The safe house was cleared. The intelligence they gathered revealed something even worse. Jean-Pierre wasn't working alone. His role was just the beginning. The conspiracy went far deeper. A network of foreign agents, powerful businessmen, and corrupt officials were all involved. They wanted to tear the country apart just to gain control and profit from chaos. But they hadn't expected Ibrahim to survive. They hadn't expected him to fight back. With help from local intelligence and a few loyal foreign allies, Ibrahim's team began breaking the entire network apart. The people behind the plot were exposed. Their bank accounts were frozen. Their secret operations were destroyed. Burkina Faso had come dangerously close to collapse. But because of Ibrahim's strength, calm thinking, and refusal to back down, the country stood tall again. The failed assassination had shaken everything, but it also proved something powerful. Ibrahim Traoré was not a man who could be broken. His enemies had tried to silence him. Instead, they made him stronger. Now, as the dust settled, Ibrahim stood on the edge of a new chapter, not just a battle for power, but a fight for the very soul of his nation. And this time, he was more prepared than ever. Now, it was time for his enemies to see just how strong his will truly was. As the truth behind the conspiracy came to light, Ibrahim's image grew even stronger, not just in Burkina Faso, but across Africa. He had survived more than one attempt on his life, and the people of Burkina Faso stood firmly by his side. But the enemies he faced weren't finished yet. These weren't ordinary opponents. They included powerful international companies, corrupt local leaders, and foreign intelligence groups. And they weren't going to give up easily. They were determined to stop Ibrahim from leading Burkina Faso toward true freedom and independence. The investigation exposed something shocking. Big global corporations had teamed up with people inside the country to steal and control Burkina Faso's resources. This wasn't just a local plot, it had international reach. Ibrahim's strong stand against foreign control had scared those who had gotten rich by keeping Africa weak. Now they were fighting back. This wasn't just about removing one leader. It was about controlling a whole country and keeping its people in chains. Then came the worst news of all. Ibrahim learned that his enemies were planning one final attack, an all-out strike to remove him once and for all. Armed foreign mercenaries had secretly entered the country. They had advanced weapons and were targeting military bases and government buildings. Their plan was to create chaos and break the government from within. It was hard news to accept. But Ibrahim knew what he had to do. This wasn't just about saving himself anymore, it was about saving the country's future. He gathered his most trusted officers, including Colonel Zongo, and gave the order to prepare the capital's final defense. Time was running out. The mercenaries were highly trained, well-funded, and backed by powerful international forces. But Ibrahim had one thing they didn't: the people. From farmers and students to workers and soldiers, everyone was ready to stand and fight beside their leader. The spirit of unity across the country became his strongest weapon. On the night before the attack, Ibrahim stood quietly on the balcony of his palace, looking out over the sleeping city of Ouagadougou. The weight of what was coming pressed down on him, but he also felt strength, not just from within, but from the millions who believed in him. This wasn't just his fight. It was a fight for Africa's future. Burkina Faso, once treated as just another poor, dependent country, had become a symbol of hope. And those attacking it weren't just trying to bring down Ibrahim, they were attacking the very idea that an African nation could rise, lead itself, and stand proud. As the sun began to rise, Ibrahim's forces moved into position. The people followed, blocking roads, protecting buildings, forming a human shield around their city. Then the attack began. At dawn, the mercenaries struck. They came in fast, using heavy weapons and military tactics. But they had made a big mistake. They had underestimated the spirit of the Burkina people. Ibrahim's forces were outnumbered, but they had one big advantage: they knew their land, and they loved it deeply. The battle was tough and intense. The people of Burkina Faso gave it everything they had. Every time a mercenary fell, the people fought back even harder. They weren't just fighting with weapons, they were fighting with heart. Even though Ibrahim was still healing from earlier wounds, he didn't stay behind. He joined the fight side by side with his soldiers. His presence gave them strength. The motorcycle he had used after the first attack had become a powerful symbol. It showed the people that he wasn't just a president in a palace, he was one of them. He didn't just give orders from afar. He stood with his people in the middle of the struggle. As the battle went on, the tide began to turn. The mercenaries were skilled, but they had made a mistake. They had underestimated the unity and strength of the Burkina people. They started losing ground. Their attacks slowed. Some of them tried to retreat, realizing they had failed. By the end of the day, the mercenaries were defeated. Their mission to destroy the government had failed. Burkina Faso had won, but the cost was high. Many brave lives were lost. Ibrahim stood tall. He had survived. The country had survived. And the world had watched it happen. This wasn't just a military win. It was a moment that showed the strength of a nation and its leader. But Ibrahim knew this wasn't the end. The fight for true African freedom was still ongoing. The forces of corruption and foreign control weren't finished. But something had been proven. The strength of Burkina Faso's people could not be broken. A few days later, Ibrahim addressed the nation in a live speech. His face was calm. His voice was firm but hopeful. "Today we stood together," he said. "We fought for our land, our freedom, and our future. This victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every one of you who stood beside me, who believed in a free and proud Africa. This is just the beginning. We will keep building a future where Africa is strong, united, and free." The people cheered. Across the country there was pride and belief. They had seen their president stand in the fire and not back down. They had seen him lead not with fear, but with courage and love for his people. That day would be remembered for years, not just as a battle won, but as proof of what a nation can achieve when it stands together. Ibrahim Traoré had been tested, and he passed that test with honor. His survival was more than personal, it became a victory for Burkina Faso, and a message of hope for the whole African continent. If you believe in a future where African nations speak for themselves, stand proud, and rise together, we invite you to be part of this journey. Subscribe to our channel, The Voice of Ibrahim Traoré. Together we stand for truth, dignity, and freedom. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning.